what has Excelsior's domain been picking up from Cosmic Toys? Let's have a look. Now, once upon a time, many moons ago, I picked both of these items up from Cosmic Toys. And I've just never ever got round to actually doing anything with them. As is often the way in life, things have intervened, and I resolved that today, notwithstanding other random things that have happened today, I would get round to actually unboxing both my Optimus Prime and my Hank from Dungeons & Dragons. The only thing these guys have really got in common is that they had animated shows in the 80s, and both of these toys are produced by Hasbro. Now, there is one interesting thing that did occur to me when I was looking at both of these and sort of thinking about, I really should have looked at these before. The toy on the left has been reproduced massively over the last 40 years. There must be countless different versions of Optimus Prime out there. The same cannot be said for the toy on the right, because I'm not actually sure that there has ever been a Hank action figure before this one. I seem to recall there being some sort of statuette type figure of him, but I'm not sure that they ever actually got out and out toys at the time when the cartoon came out, which is the cartoon that I remember him being based from, which I have very fond memories of. As of course I do have fond memories of the Transformers cartoon as well. But, the Transformers cartoon took off and spawned a massive franchise. Whereas of course Dungeons & Dragons already had a franchise of its own, which wasn't cartoon or toy based. So they went down very different paths despite spawning at the same sort of time. So I thought I'd have a look at both of these. Now, somewhat ironically, of course, this Prime doesn't actually transform. But when I saw him, I thought, do you know what? I like that because it's very much an animated Prime. It's not a reproduction of the original Prime toy, which I never owned. And I still have never picked up a G1 Prime to this day. And as I say, maybe that comes back around to the fact that I know that if I had a hankering after a Prime, I could do exactly what I've done here and just pick one up. Because they're still all over the place. It's not hard to do that. Whereas this guy, obviously I would have to sort of actively seek out if I were to try and find a proper, authentic version of him from back in the day. So, why don't I start with Hank? Given that we've all got loads of Optimus Primes to our name, allegedly. Now this may already be somewhat open. I think I got it at a discount on this basis, and it is indeed open. But I haven't peeked, so this will be as new to me as it is to you. Now, I have heard that some of these have issues. I don't know exactly what the issues were, however. So let's just zoom in on him a little bit. Now he looks exactly as he does on the box. So immediately I have very sort of few problems with that in terms of his sort of underlying quality, because he is clearly exactly as he looks in the box. He's got articulation, albeit that he's somewhat restricted because of this cape around his shoulders. There's some slits in the sides there on his arms, so in theory you could sort of just sort of amend his arm positions using that I suppose. He has knees, although they seem to be conscientious objectors to moving. Okay, there we go. I'll say this for it. It's definitely got good stiff joints, because that does not want to. That does not want to move at all. Okay. That's good. You don't really want the opposite, but it still makes it quite hard to move him. I suppose is that because he's designed just to be posed rather than played with, possibly. His feet are movable to a similar degree. He's got very concerning ankle movement. Yeah, so okay. Face sculpt looks decent. Oh, he's got a good twisting waist as well, actually. That's impressive. I like that. I like that because they've sort of disguised that using his belt a bit. So you can't really tell that he's going to be able to swivel like that until you try it. So I kind of appreciate that, because one of the problems I often have with modern figures is that the sort of the chest join here always looks so sort of, hey, look, I've got an articulated chest, look at my funny looking chest. Whereas his is much more subtle than that, so I quite like that as a concept. I'm getting slightly sort of Mark Hamill vibes off his face. I don't know quite why. Anyone else get that vibe? I don't know. He seems to only have these fists, unless there's something else in here. Let's have a look. Okay, so we've got a die, which is nice. Oh yes, we've got. Now, had I not looked in the box, I'd have forgotten about this potentially. But he has a sort of energy blast arrow ready to go. So that's his sort of the energized form of his normal bow, which is clever. But as I say, no sort of alternate hands or anything like that. So it looks like he's very much rigged to just to sort of hold it, the energy sort of bow like that in the picture on the cover. And of course we've got Bobby and Diana mentioned on the back of the packaging there. I think last time I noticed, and I was reminded of this actually when I went into Cosmic this weekend, because I saw that he still had the other figures in the range. I was kind of surprised that they hadn't sold out by this point, but I don't really know what demand has been like with these, if there have been issues with them. But I can't say that I'm finding really anything to complain about with him. I mean, it's clever that what they've done in terms of, he doesn't really seem to hold that very well, but I mean, I like what they've done in terms of sort of giving him the sort of the energy bow version as well as the standard bow version. I quite like that as a concept. I do wonder whether or not this bow is actually going to... Okay, it does fit in just. I was a little bit wary of doing that, I must admit. I'm trying to recreate his look on the back of the packaging here. Let's see if I can actually make it work, because it's kind of... It's a little bit forced feeling, I don't know. I can't quite convince his arm to go round in the same way that they're doing it on the because that to me looks a little bit more like a sort of a CGI version of him rather than the actual toy. I don't know, that might just be me. So I can't quite... Is he supposed to do it like... Oh, have I got that in the right place? Does that move? No. Have I got the... perhaps I've got his... perhaps I had the bow the wrong way round, actually. Perhaps it needs to be this way up so that he can actually see what he's... He can actually get his hand beneath the arrow, and then you can slot it in so you can grip it better. That's probably what I was getting wrong there. So it's, as I say, I think this is definitely one where it's rigged more for display than it is for play. So I mean that's kind of it, but it's not very... I don't feel like I'm doing it in a very convincing fashion at all. It's kind of there, but not quite. I don't know. What do you think? Is that sort of that vaguely as it should be? Possibly. So I can see how you could probably tweak that around a little bit and sort it out. But it's strange in a sense. I don't get the vibes off it that I don't get the same feeling from it as I would, I think, had I had one when I was little and played with it. It's one of those things I find interesting about getting these reproductions of... Well, it's not even a reproduction though, is it? This is the funny thing. It's not a reproduction of an old figure. It's it's a modern figure for an old character that never had a toy in the first place, and is getting that sort of oversight fixed now. And I think I feel a little bit differently about it than I would do if it were a reproduction of an old toy somehow. I can't quite explain what my thinking is behind that. I think it's because I have nostalgia for the show, but I don't have any nostalgia for this toy because this toy was never a thing in the first place. And it's not that it's a sort of a bad toy, but it's like it's not filling a gap for me because there was never a gap in the first place because we never had these toys. I have no idea if I'm making any sort of sense at all, but it's just I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. I appreciate the thought behind it, but it's not sort of filling a void for me, I suppose, because it's not an alternative to getting a replacement for a vintage toy that's really, really expensive, and therefore this would be the only way you could actually afford one. That I suppose is the difference here, isn't it? Is that it's not a question that you can't get hold of them anymore, it's that you could never get hold of them. So this isn't replacing anything, this is just being a thing of it in its own right, which is perfectly admirable, and I understand, why some people would like this. But by the same token, I guess I'm literally just not feeling it personally, which is that's perfectly valid, I think, as a concept. I don't think I necessarily have to get it for it to be a good toy at all. And I don't know what people's problems with this have been as a toy. I mean, you can't compare it to anything because there's no comparator. So did people just feel it wasn't detailed enough? It wasn't big enough? Let me know in the comments what you thought of this. Was this just not a thing for you on the same basis that I've just described, or what? I mean, poor old Hank here. I mean, he had by far and away the most firepower. I mean, I have to say, it's not the cleanest. He hasn't got the cleanest looking joints. I'm not convinced he would actually survive that many repositionings, if I'm perfectly honest. But I think the overall look of him is not bad at all, and I think they've made him quite thin, which is appropriate for him. But I just don't quite know if I'm really feeling it. I don't know. Maybe he should have come with some sound effects. Am I missing the sound effects? Is that why I'm not finding the connection with the cartoon? It's an interesting one. I don't really have a convincing response to myself, really, strangely. But anyway, there we are. So that's a very, very quick unboxing, isn't it? It was already half unboxed of Hank from the old 80s Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. And there he's on the side of the box for comparison purposes. So I think that is a proper sort of cell taken from the show. And ironically, I mean, even his sort of energy, they've definitely got it. They've modelled it absolutely spot on. You can't knock them for the authenticity of it at all. His belt's spot on, his boots are spot on, everything's spot on. It's just that he was never a toy. Is that? Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe just because he was never a toy originally, the reproduction doesn't work because it's not actually reproducing anything. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think of that one. That one's definitely got me sort of philosophically challenged, I think. I can't feel attached to that at all. I don't know. So, let's have a look at this Prime then. Let's see if I'm any more attached to this Prime, because I think that he does have some features which I'm going to like, even though he doesn't transform. I knew full well that he didn't transform, so that's not going to be a sort of a bitter disappointment to me. So, let's have a look at him. So this is an official Hasbro product, and it's an RED. This is Robot Enhanced Design. I'm not sure when he was released, but I am about to find out. I'm just doing a little bit of slicing and dicing here to get into him, because the sides of the box are still sealed. Let's just see. There we go. Okay. So in terms of when he was produced and so on, I'm having a quick look for a year. I'm thinking might be 2020. It's just down here on this line here, so you might be able to see that. I've just been struggling with my glasses on because it's teeny tiny print. Now this is I mean, on the back here, this is what kind of attracted me to this, because A, it was very, very reasonably priced, but B, Energy Axe, creation matrix of leadership, depending on your point of view, I suppose, and of course his laser rifle. Now, I remember this both ways. I remember him having the Energy Axe option both in the cartoon, but also in the comics, as I recall. So there was a sort of it was one of those few moments of joint continuity, I guess, between the cartoon and the comics. Or at least the comics I was reading, which were the British ones. And I remember it, I'm just smiling, 'cause way down there at the bottom of the box seemed to be some Transformers tokens or vouchers or something. So, points being prizes and all that good stuff. Actually, I think it just says Transformers Authentic or something. Can't quite make it out. But yeah, okay. So let's have a look exactly what's he got accessories. So we've got two cartons here. So as expected, he's got his Energy Axe there. He's got his primary weapon, and he's got the little creation matrix there. And that again is I would say that's probably, it's not quite the film version of it, but it's got that sort of vibe for me. And of course, in the UK comics, the creation matrix was actually just in his head, basically. It wasn't a physical object. And I'm not even, I guess we inherit that from after the film time? I don't know. But the idea was that in the UK comics, Shockwave tapped into him mentally to get the creation matrix before he was able to transfer it to Witwicky. And that was kind of how that went. We've got a few different hand configurations here as well. There's the pointy finger hand. I don't know why we've got that as a thing, but we have. Yeah, so various different hand options here. I'm trying to think if he ever used anything other than the axe, but perhaps I'm just thinking of the spiky ball that Megatron had. I don't think Prime had anything else. But they used to be able to do this thing in the in the 80s cartoon, where they would just sort of retract their fists into their arms and then pop out sort of an alternative usage kind of, piece of kit, basically. So there he is. He's quite a vinyl-y sort of feel to him. It's that sort of slightly soft plastic. But I do rather like that. I like the articulation on him quite a lot. And I like the overall sort of the colour scheme is quite sort of subtle. It's not sort of really, really bright primary colours. It's quite subtle. Now, presumably, I can open up his chest in some fashion here, because otherwise, how do you use the matrix? Why can I not get in there? There we go. Okay, so you've just got a little matrix housing in there that just pops open like that, and then you can pop in the creation matrix / matrix of leadership in there and close him back up again. So that's a nice little featurette. He's got his feet move quite a lot actually, so that's nice. That's cool actually. There's a lot more. Yeah, there's a lot more. He's got a lot of. Yeah, he's got a really good flexibility actually. More so, I think, that perhaps than I was anticipating. And his legs will go out to the side like that quite happily as well. That's pretty cool. So we can sort of do that sort of thing with him, and he's fairly capable of doing that. I think if you've got the balance right. So his knees, I suppose his knees won't go down far enough, but it's not bad. So you can't quite do a superhero landing kind of thing. But I think if you balanced him out a little bit, perhaps he'd be able to handle it better. Can't quite make him do it. Ugh. He won't quite balance. He won't quite balance for me. Oh, nearly. There we go. Whee! I've no idea what pose I'm going for there, but anyway. So yeah, there's definitely quite a lot of flexibility in him there, which I'm impressed by. And I guess this is the advantage with this one, is that he's not having to compromise joint movement because he doesn't have to transform. So he doesn't have to do that, which is clever. Okay. So you've actually got to swap his fist out then in order to be able to hold his laser rifle from the looks of it. So which one do I need? This one. That's interesting. So it actually goes kind of behind his... interesting. Just figuring out how he's got to hold it in order to actually be able to get his fist in. Let's see if we can swap this out. So that's original hand out, placement in, and then does he have to? Because I want him to be able to hold it. I wonder if this was a problem with the original as well, because you can't slot that rifle in like that because the butt is too big. So do you have to actually put the aft grip through his fist there? I think you'd have to. Yeah, I think you'd have to for him to be able to actually hold it. Yeah, so perhaps I'm trying to do it wrong actually. So that's cool. So you can do that. And then on the other hand, you've got his energy axe to slot in. Now I guess that some people would be violently opposed to this as a concept because he can't transform. Now I'm not overly concerned about the fact that he can't transform, if I'm honest, because I think there's a lot of sort of... Ooh, that's very loose, gosh. There's a lot of sort of flexibility to him in this form that you wouldn't have gotten from the original 80s toy. So as a... Again, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because he's supposed to be able to transform. That is his thing. He is a transformer after all. He's one of the Transformers, the G1 Transformers. So, does he lose something as a toy in lacking the ability to transform? Arguably, yes. But as an action figure, if you just want to sort of have the robots battling each other as an action figure, arguably that's a better option. Because he has far more flexibility than you would probably get, or than you would have had from the original 80s toy. Now, obviously the modern Primes would be another thing again. They'd have, God knows how many points of articulation built into them and would also transform. So, I guess he is a very particular type of Prime with a very particular worldview and purpose in mind, i.e. you can just pose him a bit, but you can't transform him. And yet, ironically, he's still got, sort of screw holes here and here and here. So you're not getting a sort of a cartoon perfect version of him. You're just getting a really good looking version of Prime. And I like the head sculpt. I think the head sculpt is nice. It's very much sort of, my Prime sort of thing. I think they could have done a little bit more detail on things like his exhaust pipes. I think they could have done a little bit more, maybe a bit more silvering, or just a few little sort of holes there just to indicate that he's, he is a sort of a full-on Prime, if you see what I mean. But I guess, per the sort of the animated version of him, there's no sign of his wheels anywhere, so his wheels are completely vanished, which they wouldn't have done in the original versions, in the original G1 toy version. So yeah, I mean, as I say, I'm not a great connoisseur of Transformers as toys. I've gathered a few G1 examples on my travels, and I've got really ones that meant things to me personally, like Jetfire Back. But I do quite like that. I think as a display piece, that's quite a nice Prime that doesn't break the bank and isn't going to chew up an entire shelf to itself. If I were going to get a really full-on version, I'd probably get a much bigger version than that, because you'd want to really sort of make it a centerpiece of your display, I guess. But I think as a sort of a pocket money Prime, if you like, I think that's not half bad. Yeah. No, I'm impressed with I'm impressed that they've bothered to put that much articulation into a relatively cheap version of him. I think that's quite a reasonable attempt on their part. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you made of this one. I doubt it's the worst Prime ever. So really, albeit yes, it doesn't transform, but nonetheless, I think it's captured the spirit of Prime from the G1 cartoon pretty nicely. He's got quite a bit of sort of presence to him. He's quite thick. He's got quite a lot of presence, as I say. He's just got that sort of that weight to him somehow. I don't know if that makes any sort of sense, but I just think that they could have skimped far more than they actually have. So I think it's more worthwhile than you might imagine for something that doesn't transform. So on that bombshell, I will leave it there. I hope you've enjoyed this little look at two sort of recent Hasbro reissues of things that never existed and things that have existed many times. So on that bombshell, I'll leave you there. Cheers for now.